Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.
Hello everyone, welcome to Road to Cheltenham. This is such an important show because we've reached a critical junction in our journey, and that is the Christmas period where there are so many top class races. We are going to try to just scratch the surface. No, we're going to go deeper than that, of all of those races that are coming up over the Christmas period. Ruby, it's going to be fast and furious.
It'll have to be, Lydia. It's going to be an exciting week next week, or hopefully it will be potentially some great races. So hopefully it lives up to what we hope it'll be.
Absolutely. Let's start with Kempton, shall we? And the King George VI chase. And the first thing that you all really need to know is, what is the ground like at the moment? Well, Barney Clifford can tell us. At the time of speaking, they had far less rain over the previous night than he was expecting. And he's not forecast that much rain in the run-up towards the Boxing Day, but again, it's very volatile, and he just wanted to stress how wet it was in October and November, which means that just underneath the top of the ground, it's actually very forgiving. It's good to soft. He is expecting, Ruby.
Yeah, that'd be great. That's what you want. A safe racing surface. Safe is the word we use. The wrong word. A kind racing surface is the word. That is what everybody wants, and Kempton, to be fair, usually gets that. So fingers crossed this year will be no different.
There's another element to this as well, though. It's in terms of the bad weather, and particularly for the Irish raiders. Just talk us through what the complications could be.
Yeah, it's not even the bad weather, it's the potential of bad weather. Obviously, Holyhead Port is closed, which means the Irish horses to get to London have to go from Rosslare into either Fishguard or Pembroke, but into South Wales. Going Larne, Stranraer, it's just too much of a land journey then from Scotland all the way down. But when you do travel from Rosslare to South Wales, you're much closer to the open Atlantic, and they are more selective on taking horses. So any rough seas, they don't take horses down there. So fingers crossed we don't get rough seas.
So given the combination of that forecast and what the ground is currently doing at Kempton, with good to soft basically prophesied, people who are on the edge, Forbett's Cross, Spillane's Tower, might choose to stay at home.
It's a potential, but I still think the supplementaries are tomorrow morning, so Spillane's Tower will have to be supplemented. Corbett's Cross, I still think will be left in. So yeah, fingers crossed. It's just by Monday, they'll have to go on Monday. The ports are closed Tuesday anyway, and they're closed Wednesday and Thursday, so they can't come home until the 27th. But for something goes wrong on the 23rd, they'll have to keep the options open of rerouting to Leopardstown.
Okay, so you've just seen the betting for the King George with the horses that need to be supplemented highlighted. Let's get straight into the action, shall we? And first of all, Ruby, I think we need to think about how the King George might be run. And in many ways, doesn't that hinge on the participation of Il Francais, for whom the plan is to come?
It is. That's where it does hinge. And if you watch them in there last year, and we split races last year, so Il Francais booked out in the Caudo Star. You had Frodon, Allaho in the King George. First two fences, there wasn't much of a difference between them, but it was through the first mile that Il Francais put up brilliant jumps, those four fences down the back. But by the time they turned in on the first circuit, Il France had gotten a long way ahead of the King George, which he managed to keep up all the way. And even when they got to the line, Il Francais came home a long way in front of Hewick. So look, a healthy, fit, Il Francais is going to ensure an end-to-end gallop in the King George.
But as we know, bleeding problems that he's had since then, that is the imponderable.
It is the imponderable, but I still think James Reid will have to ride him like he's healthy and well, because there isn't any other way to ride him. So look, he'd be a huge addition to the race, and we do hope that he puts his best foot forward and turns up, because what he did last year at Kempton was really exciting.
Oh, it's phenomenal. And the signs are at the moment that he's coming over with his stable companion, General en Chef, who travelled into the Coral Gold Cup really well before maybe finding less than it looked likely that he would. Right, let's move on to Spillane's Tower, who would need to be supplemented. So something of a doubt about his participation. It would be the first time he's raced outside of Ireland, Ruby.
It would be. But look, he came to prominence really last year at Easter time at Ferryhouse. He jumped through on the inside of the second last fence in the Ryanair Gold Cup. He got in close to the last, but he quickened nicely to go and win and land the Grade 1. He then pulled out a Punchestown, stepped up to 3 miles. he was dropped in at the back of the field towards the first fence, but he cruised through the race. Now, it wasn't strongly run, but he did arrive travelling really well at second last, and his ears pricked going to the last fence where he pulled out plenty to beat Monty Star, who had, of course, chased home fact to file in the Brown Advisory at Cheltenham. He made his reappearance this year in the John Durkin. He had the smoothest passage through the race, though. He took his time in that race, and I thought coming to the second last fence, the horse on the route outside was coming to beat all those inside him. Galopin the shot, fast or slow, fact to file. And I'd still thought at the back of the last, when Spillan's Tower quickened, he was going to win the race. He just couldn't get by fact to file. But the reproduction of that run, Lydia, is probably the best form on offer.
Yeah, I took a more positive view about that, the way he finished off the race, than you. I felt that he'd been sort of set a task to get from the back to the front, provided he is a stayer. He's got to prove himself over a strongly run 3 miles, which it could well be with Il Est Français. The ground now, I mean, it was good to soft at worst in the John Durkin. I think it'd be fine. I mean, I know the decision will be made.
So do I. It was nice ground at Ferry House. He won at Punchestown in May time, so I think he'll handle it. Yeah, I don't know. Does he want really soft ground? He has farmed really soft ground, but he's able to handle both.
Okay, let's move on to Banbridge, for whom the latest weather forecast from Barney Clifford was very much good news. Latest indication from Joseph O'Brien is that this horse will be coming over to Kempton. Now, we know he likes the track, but will he stay 3 miles?
That is a question mark. We can see him winning the Sylvie Knocker Conti chase last year, got beside Pick Dory at the second last and put the pressure on going to the last and pulled away to win. Obviously not the King George trip. We saw him this year. He was unlucky in Cork. He was definitely going to give Energamine a race when he unseated at the last. But can you judge him on his only run over 3 miles? I don't think so. That was in the Sefton Novices hurdle. And as you played the race, look at him away from the fourth last hurdle, I think he's already struggling. That's too far from home. He'd won the Martin Pipe prior to that, and he's well and truly beaten by the time he turns in. So I don't think you can judge him on his one start over 3 miles. Will he stay? He's always looked to me like a horse that would, and he got the trip well in a 2 mile and 5 in the Martin Pipe. So I think there's every chance he will stay.
I agree your point about his sole start over 3 miles. And I think we should remember he comes here off what would have been a career best performance. Like we both think, I think, in the Hilly Way.
Yes, he's definitely coming here in good health.
Okay, so Corbett's Cross is an intriguing runner. And again, Emmett Mullins has made noises that if it were to be good to soft, that he wouldn't necessarily want to come over with this horse. But there's a lot of imponderables with this horse for me. Is he up to this class? Will his jumping hold up? And how are they going to ride him, do you think?
I don't know. They've formed a habit of riding him from behind. Obviously, in the National Hunt Chase last year, he dropped in. Derek O'Connor rode him. But even if you look at him at the second fence, he's really high up in the air. And again, at the third fence, and they're going slow, and Derek was trying to settle him. So probably rode him that way on purpose. But then if you watch him at Aintree, when they stepped him up in grade, Mark Walsh rode him. First fence, again, really high, big at the second fence, sticky at the third fence. Mark has to ride him away on landing. Like that kind of jumping will have him lost early in the King George. And even if you look at him this year in Wexford, behind Hartwood, fifth fence, Buddy One is in front, really high, sixth fence again, way up in the air. And at the eighth fence, now they weren't going that quick at Wexford, but he was still losing over 5 miles per hour on average at each fence. And when you're going slower, you shouldn't lose as much speed. So I would think jumping is a huge question mark for Corbett's Cross and the King George.
It was a really interesting interview with Emmett Mullins on the Nick Luck Daily podcast earlier this week. And he was suggesting that he thinks if the pace is stronger, they can ride the horse more forward, that before they were trying to settle him. And so hence that's where he was positioned. Does that hint that there might be a change of headgear or just having the hood that he's worn the last 3 times off?
I don't know. It looked to me like definitely at Aintree last year, like he could have come off. Now, they left it on him for his first start this year in Wexford. But I could see why they put it on him. He did get keen towards the end of his novice hurdling, and they put a hood on him to settle him. But I think now that he's up in grade, especially if Ile France even runs, I don't think he'd need the hood. That's only my opinion.
No, and I tend to agree. And it sounded like from what Emmett was saying that they're going to ride him a little bit more forward, which would tend to be the classic thing to do at Kempton. Ground-wise, surely the good to soft ground is fine. If you go further back in his form, he's got some quite high-level novice hurdling form on that kind of ground. He
does. I wonder, they just think that they need slower ground to slow down the opposition a bit.
So it sounds like you think it could be vulnerable if they go apace. His goose might be cooked very early.
I do think, and you can see it in King George's, if you don't get in the rhythm with them early, it's a hard place to start pegging horses back.
Okay. One horse that managed to do that was Hewick.
He was, and look,
Hewick.
that flies in the face of what you say. You can pick him up here in the second circle. Like, he looks 1,000,000 to 1 with Gavin Sheehan, as they go back from to the where they started in last year's King George. Even turning in, he'd find it hard to say he was going to win the race. Now, obviously, Shishkin went at the second last, and Hewick eventually gets there to win the race. I think the race fell apart. Allaho, we didn't see since. Brave Man's Game hasn't exactly franked the form since. Look, King George's can fall into horses' laps, and I think last year's race fell into Hewick's lap. Whether he runs or not, we still don't know. But I don't think he'll catch this bunch of horses up like he did last year.
No, he's got some better form since, hasn't he? The Punchestown Gold Cup was very good form, and the Down Royal Champion Chase form was last time. He is capable of hitting the frame at the
Yes,
highest level.
he is. But yeah, look, he is a very good horse. Don't get me wrong. But I'd be surprised if he's a back-to-back King George winner.
And he'd be running, of course, in the name of Tara Lee Cogan, who's taken over at Shark Hanlon's. He's got the 6-month ban for bringing the sport into disrepute. She's only trained 3 winners over jumps in Ireland, I read, and not one since 2014, 2015. So obviously a very big day for her, but she knows the yard well, says Shark. Right, let's move on to Envoi LN. Now, Henry de Bromhead says he's got a thing about the King George. It keeps popping up in the back of his mind. And obviously he sent him over 2 years ago to try the race.
Yeah, and he ran stink. Made a mistake at the 5th fence, hit the 6th fence, and that was all over that early for Envoi LN on his sole King George journey. Obviously, he had good form at the back end of last season. He arrived in the Ryanair travelling really well, going to the last fence, got to Protectorate, looked the likely winner going to the last fence, but Protectorate pulled away from him up the running, and he's obviously come back this year to win at Down Royal. You can see him jumping the last where he pulls away to beat Hewick. He's in good form. He's just not getting any younger either, Envoi LN. And can you really take that one King George run? I think it was too bad to be true. I think he has loads of good form to suggest he's able to run well in this race. But again, I just don't know about Envoi LN. He's just not getting any younger, is he?
No, I think all of those points are fair. I just wondered, I suppose, whether there was something about Kempton, but it's more likely to be something else that caused that flop, I think.
I think it is because he's right, forming down Royal going right-handed. So he was just, whatever happened, King George's mistakes early, he was out of the race.
Okay, Grey Dawning is an interesting contender representing the Skeltons, a second season chaser. He'd be running here after a tough race in the Betfair Chase when he was beaten by Royale Pagaille.
He would be, but I think if you look at him last year, this is his best day at Cheltenham when he won the novice chase. He beats Genie's Destiny, and I think Jello back in third even makes this form look a little bit stronger. Obviously, Genie's Destiny may have let it down, but Jello in the Peterborough has boosted it. He's a sound jumper. Even if you watch him at Haydock when they turn into the back straight in the Betfair Chase on the first circuit, the way he jumped the second fence, and that goes at the third fence, he jumps like a horse that would really suit the pace of a King George. Now, gets to the second last fence then, and Harry ends up committing him, and he makes that mistake at the last. He does get very tired, and Royale Pagaille battles back to beat him. Yeah, and you'd imagine it would have to have left his mark, but Dan said there and then that he wouldn't be going to the King George unless he was really happy with him. Now, the one question mark we have with him is going right-handed. All his form is left-handed. He did run at Exeter in his first start, and interestingly, Harry lined him up on the outside, where he usually rides him down the inside when he's racing left-handed. When you rode him right-handed, he lined him up wide. And at the third last fence, does he jump a fraction left? Kind of looks like it to me. And again, at the second last fence, I didn't think it looking at him racing left-handed that he jumps left. But when you do look at him in Exeter, there is a small chance he does jump a bit to his left.
I did think that he looked like he goes left when going left-handed. I think that's the biggest question mark for Grey Dawning. I'm a big fan of the horse. I think he'll be able to mix it at the highest level over 3 miles. But this track, I do wonder about that. We should mention Royale Pagaille, who beat him, of course, in the Betfair Chase. He's picked up a typical one of his little in-running injuries. He's a horse that tends to overreach and gives himself nicks and things like that. So it is a bit of I think Venetia Williams has said she's a bit pushed to get there, but she's still hopeful of doing so. She's also hopeful of doing so with L'Homme Pressé, who a couple of years ago would probably have finished second behind an on-song Brave Man's Game in this race.
Yeah, and that was Envoi LN's King George, the one he ran in. But look, off the home turn, L'Homme Pressé led them to the third last. Brave Man's Game is coming on his outside. Brave Man's Game joined them at the second last and had put the race probably to bed when they got to the last when L'Homme Pressé unseated Charlie Deutsch. Now, we didn't see L'Homme Pressé then for 390 odd days. He came back and he won the Fleur de Lis at Lingfield. He was second at Ascot over an inadequate trip. and then he went to the Gold Cup and he bounced out good and handy. So he's one of the likely ones to follow Ile-Francais early in the race. But even in the Gold Cup, 4 out, he lands in front. He led a stellar field down the hill to the third last, and he's still in front off the bend to 2 out when Galopin Des Champs comes down, he's outside, and Jerry Colombe goes by him. He did fade late in the Gold Cup, but it was a really strongly run race. And look, that's still really solid form. So if he's on his A game, he's a huge runner.
I think so. And he came back after a long injury, something like, I think, 391 days last season to win the Fleur de Lis chase. So he's capable fresh as well. I mean, he could in many ways be the forgotten horse in this. There's another interesting one, isn't there? This is another French raider, this time for David Cotin, and this horse's name is Juntos Ganamos. And I have engaged my French correspondent, as I regularly do for Road to Cheltenham. That is Alan Potts. Thank you very much, Alan. He says that the BHA would rate this horse 152 on his French rating, but he thinks that is an underestimation of him. He was a Grade 1 winner as a 4-year-old. He's mixed it with the best chasers in France. He tried to go with Ile-Francais recently over 3 mile 3. He's got a high cruising speed, a prominent style of racing. He can make the odd error. He's fallen a couple of times at grade 1 level, but he accounted for Gold Tweet very easily, very dominantly over 2 mile 5. His whole career at Auteuil, and Alan makes the point that, well, he thinks that he's shown that a right-hand track might actually suit him. He also makes the point that on the 17th of November, Juntos Ganamos ran in deep ground over 3 mile 3 and had a hard race in a race that took almost 7 minutes. So same argument for him as Grey Dawning, if you think that you could leave a King George behind there. What do you think?
That was the autumn Gold Cup in France. Grandiose won it, didn't he? And he obviously unseated behind Grandiose when James Reevy rode him in the Grand Steep de Paris last year. But look, he has age on his side, and could he be a Nupsala? Not sure anyone knew who he was when he arrived, and he won a King George.
I think he's probably being underestimated. I really do understand it, because we're treated, if we get 3 French runners in the King George, it's going to be a fabulous, from a race that looked, when Willie Mullins took all of his battalions out, looked like, it looks a bit shaky. It's looking fascinating to me now. 3
French runners could have 3 or 4 Irish runners. It could be an real international affair at Kempton.
Absolutely. Who's your likeliest winner? I'll be honest, I'm baffled by it at this stage.
I think if they put him in, I think the most likeliest winner will be Spillane Tower.
Okay. Well, I look forward to analysing that with you on the other side of Christmas. Let's move and talk about Leopardstown, where their featured chase of the meeting is the Savills chase. First of all, let's hear from Lorcan Wire, because the ground obviously is important there as well. The chase course is good to yielding in places. The hurdles course yielding, good to yielding in places. But he's stressing that there's a lot of kindness in the ground. They've taken the opportunity to water on the chase course from late summer into October. They've also had a lot of rain since then. And he thinks they're in a very good place, Ruby.
Hopefully they are. Obviously, Leopardstown did have issues. It's a good few years ago now, but it was too quick. But they seem to be doing a good job up there, and any rain that falls will be welcomed.
So here is the betting. And again, this could be subject to some volatility if those weather and ground conditions in Britain / Kempton cause people to change direction. This could change about a bit. But essentially, this race, Ruby, is the rematch, or revolves around the rematch between Factorfile and Galopin Des Champs. And they reoppose at a track and over a trip that we know very much suits the dual Cheltenham Gold Cup winner. Yeah,
we do. But look, he's Antipost's second favourite, or maybe he's favourite now, but there's not much between them. But I think we look at Factorfile. When you look at him last year at the Dublin Racing Festival, he has incredible pace. By the 7th fence, he was up on top of Gaelic Warrior and was taking him on. Ultimately went on to win the Arkle, but he was always galloping over Gaelic Warrior on that occasion. And by the time Gaelic Warrior unseated at the last, Factorfile was already home and hosed. He then went to the Brown Advisory. Mark Walsh dropped him in, walked him out towards the back of the field, but he just came cruising through, landed on the bridle beside Monty's pass at the second last. Or not Monty's pass. Monty Star. He'd have done well to land beside Monty's pass. Landed beside Monty Star and pulled away from him so well from the last fence. Then you go to the John Durkin, where he had to step in against the big boys. He lost his position at the bottom of the hill with a sloppy jump, and Faster Snow got in front of him. Paul Townend turned up the ante up to the fourth last in Galopin Des Champs and really stretched this John Durkin field. And in fact, the file had to deal with the odd bump off the bend. Faster Slow was keeping him tight, but he still ran down Galopin Des Champs and managed to repel Spillane's Tower. The John Durkin was an incredible run from him. Now he has to go and do it over 4 furlongs further.
Yeah.
That's what's going to be really interesting.
Okay, I was impressed by Factorfile's class last season. I was impressed by how terrier-like he was in the John Durkin, given all the things that you just explained that didn't quite roll his way. But yeah, now we're going to find out about his stamina, because Galopin de Champs is going to properly test that, isn't he?
He is. And look, the Savills chase last year was arguably Galopin de Champs' best standout performance, maybe. He'd been beaten.
Standout. The first Gold Cup, I think, was pretty
yeah, just think visually, though. This race, to me, last Christmas, he'd been beaten in the John Durkin. Paul changed tactics on him. He rode him much handier. He was up on the outside. Conflated was in front, down the inside. But it was how Paul kept the tempo in the race. 9 fence, he jumped up to Conflated. At the 11 fence, when Conflated went to slow it down, Paul landed up on top of him again, up beside him again, and kept the pressure on. It was a really even gallop. Third last fence, again, Paul made Conflated commit and keep the tempo up. And then when they rounded off the bend, Jerry Colomb is flat out trying to come after him. But it's what he does to the last fence. And when Paul opened him up and he landed, it's the distance he put between himself and Jerry Colomb, Capitano, Aya Maximus. To me, that last furlong in the Savills chase last year was just, and where he went to pull up, he went through the winner post and headed for Bray. I thought visually it was an incredible performance.
I'm such a massive fan of this horse, as you know, right from the very start, that I saw him particularly over fences. We should just at this moment mention Jerry Colomb, who worked after racing at Navan on Sunday. Gordon Elliott's been quoted this week saying that he needs to get another piece of work in him to be sure. He's got this or possibly the Fleur de Lis to go to.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, he has to overcome a disappointing display at Down Royal. He was workmanlike last year, but at least he picked up and went and won. Yes. This year he didn't. So look, he's leave that run behind him, but he's still a very good horse. He beat High Senior at Aintree. Obviously, was second in the Gold Cup, second in the Savills chase. Look, he's a very good horse. He just happens to be in the same era as Galopin de Champs, so he's slightly unlucky, maybe. Maybe. Galopin de Champs and Factorfile, both trained by Willie Mullins. You go there. What's the feeling in Cheltenham about the two? Is it, is the camp split, Oh yeah, it's almost like, I wouldn't say almost like, there was Denman and Cauto fans in Ditchie, and there are Galopin and Factorfile fans in Close Sutton. I rode him on Tuesday morning, Galopin de Champs, and he's in great form. But yeah, they're two magnificent horses to have. I'd say, I bet you Willie Mullins would love to split them. She'd be loving if he could send Factorfile off the Kempton. But look, they're going to take each other on, and they are great horses to have.
Which way are you leaning?
God, I don't know. I think if Factorfile can get by Galopin de Champs at Leopardstown, he could be one hell of a horse.
Agreed, which only stresses what a very, very dizzy target Galopin de Champs sets, and there's nothing about his John Durkin run that suggests he isn't in the same kind of form. I think he's really tough as well as everything.
He is. He's hard as nails, but it'll be a cracking contest.
It's going to be fabulous. I'm sticking with Galopin de Champs. Right, let's find out what you all think. We asked you whether Factorfile will frank the form in the Savills chase at Leopardstown. Resoundingly, 72% said no. We're Galopin de Champs fans on this show. What do you think, Ruby?
It is, but I think that's the brilliance of it. But even just looking at David Porter rides him a lot of the time, David Casey's ridden Factorfile, like, they don't hide their admiration for him. It's going to be a proper horse race.
It's so exciting. It really is. Antipost Angle has to say, Galopin's record here is exceptional. He's coming off the back of a better run in the John Durkin the last time around, and that was having missed pieces of work at an important point in the early part of the year. Lots more forward than last year to me. He was electric in this. And Galopin de Champs is the best staying chaser since Courto Star. I'll take him all day, every day, all aboard the three-peat hype train for March. Okay, and then we're going to have a look at this particular argument about Brave Man's Game, and Matty Kay's putting an argument up for him in the King George, saying that if there's good in the going description, there's question to be answers about some of the other ones. Never runs a bad race at Kempton. He's a big price for a great each way bet. And then typical social media, everybody just tells him why he's wrong. Oh, I mean, are we overlooking the 2022 King George winner? For me, that was the season where he was brilliant, and since then he hasn't managed. Something happened, whether it was Galopin de Chaume in the Gold Cup. Since then, he's never quite managed to match that feat.
I completely agree. And I even think, even though he looked a little unlucky with Shishkin interfering with him in last year's King George, like I think Shishkin stands up and Brave Man's game is only going to be third. So no, I think he's just, for whatever reason, he's regressing. And I'd say the more you look at it, I'd say the more you realise Paul Nicholls got the most out of him already.
Unfortunately, maybe that is the case. Final bit is from Dino, who says, how on earth is Spillan's tyre the price he is? He destroys this lot. He's contemptuous of the rest of the King George field. We should just mention, we've mentioned him in passing, Monty's star. Henry de Bromhead said at the start of the season, we're working backwards from the Gold Cup. I'm retain an interest in this horse because I think he's never had an end-to-end gallop over 3 months. I think that could bring out the best in him. He's returning in the Savills New Year's Day chase, isn't he, at Tremor?
But that would look the logical place to start with him. If I was Henry de Bromhead, would you go into Savills in Leopardstown to try and take on Galopin de Chaume and Fact to File, Jerry Calam all with a run? Or do you go to Tremor as your starting point? It looks a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, agreed. But it does also suggest that the early part of the season hasn't been as smooth as ideal? Or is it just ground related?
I honestly don't know. Did he have some sort of a setback, or you need to miss a little bit of work and you're behind? And if even for him, he wasn't going to make Down Royal. If he doesn't run the John Durkin, there aren't that many races for them. Yeah. So all of a sudden, since the John Durkin, there wasn't a race for him in Ireland. So I'd say Tremor. If you do miss your intended first target, well then your second target becomes your starting point, and I'd say they're working from there forward.
Yeah, I get that. And it's a race, of course, that Henry has won with Champagne West in 2017 and Minella Indo in 2023. Right, let's change distance, shall we, and have a look at the Rewards Club Chase betting. This is at Leopardstown over 2 mile, 1 over Christmas, and it is the return of Gaelic Warrior. And the key question for him is he's come up against more seasoned rivals who have an advantage of race fitness over him.
Yeah, he is, and it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. Now, look, if you watch him at the Dublin Racing Festival last year, Leopardstown going left-handed, he makes the run and he's jumping violently out to his right. Now, the more you look at him, and even back over hurdles, when he gets a lead, he probably doesn't go as right. And you can see him at the last fence in Leopardstown how right he went. But then you watch him in the Arctic, down over the first couple of fences, when they're going a really good gallop, Paul is in behind, and he jumps straight to die. So I'd imagine they'd be hoping he can get a lead at Leopardstown next week. But he's a staying 2 miler. He's not a speedy 2 miler, there's no doubt about that. He's a staying 2 miler. And look, it'll be an interesting race. Barry Connolly's been making good noises about Marine Nationale. And you know what? Not that I agree, but I do think he was in against more experienced horses than Nace. And he never got into a rhythm jump. And we highlighted at the time, 3rd fence, 4th fence, Calixius just jumped him silly. So, yeah, I expect him to come forward. Do I think he'll win the race? No, I don't. But I think he'll jump better.
Yeah, hopefully. Barry Connell has been very Barry Connellish about him because he's kind of suggested that he's kind of on the comeback trail, a forgotten champion like Constitution Hill. I mean, Marine Nationale has got to prove himself, at this level and over fences, because at the moment his novice hurdling form outstrips it.
It does, way outstrips it, but he'll have to jump better. And if hopefully the run in Nace, he's schooled at Punchestown since the run in Nace would have brought him forward. But it's probably D-Day for Marine Nationale as a chaser.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Right, particularly for this season at least. Let's remind ourselves about what happened in this race last season. And Dino Blue managed to beat the boys.
She did. It was a very wet day. Memory serves me right. Gentleman to me booked out to make the running. And he went a decent enough gallop. Dino Blue sat behind him. Look up over the first fence, third last fence. You can see Captain Guinness fading out of your shot. He's also in here when we're running. I'm not so sure. And then she ended up jumping the last to go away and beat Gentleman to me really well. I was slightly disappointed with her at Cork on her last start. Hopefully she's come forward for that run. But again, if Gentleman to me runs, does he set the race up for these horses? If he goes a good gallop, does that suit the likes of a Gaelic Warrior? does Dino Blue want a strongly run race? She probably does. She's another staying 2-miler. So, yeah, it'll be a good race. But I think without John Bonnet and Innergamine, you're hoping Gaelic Warrior can stick his hand up and throw his hat in the ring.
You were saying that they'd be hoping to take a lead. You're relying on that scenario, Gentleman Demi setting a pace for Dino Blue.
Something like that anyway, yeah. It just does look like a horse that goes straighter when he's getting the lead.
And won't Paul, but the flip side to that coin is you said he's a staying 2-mile chaser. So won't Paul need to press on with him? Because I felt he was beaten for speed at Punchestown by Ileti Tom, for example.
Yeah, it's catch-22. I mean, if you press on him and you end up out on the ambulance road, it's no good to you either. So tactically you have to ride it, and it will be his first run. And there's also the question, will Paul Townend be in Leopardstown? There's a possibility Ballyburn could be a Kempton.
That is a very good point. Yes, they're both on the 27th, aren't they? Yeah, so very good. Well, we will be coming back to that Ballyburn. Interesting. So who in that scenario?
So Patrick won them last year, didn't he? At Limerick?
Mm-hmm. Yes, he did.
Danny was trying to poke down.
You'll remember that race.
That was that race, was it?
Yeah, it was that race.
But no, I don't know who. No, maybe Paul will be in Leopardstown. It's just, they're all decisions that have to come to the fore as well. And obviously, whatever way you look at it, even with Christmas slightly changed with races this year, the Faugheen has gone to the third day of Christmas. Paul Townend will definitely be in Leopardstown for Galopin the Champ. So who rides whatever Willie Mullen sends down there this year? All those things change around. I don't miss those decisions.
Oh yeah, but I love this kind of criticism and trying to second guess them and get ahead of what is actually going to be done. Quilixios, could he be here rather than Captain Guinness with Captain Guinness's recurring problem?
I don't know how he came out of the Tingle Creek. Would be dependent on that, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so lots of balls up in the air, but lots of exciting chases over Christmas. We will be looking forward to analysing those. Of course, there's the Desert Orchid on the second day of Kempton's meeting as well, over 2 miles to talk about. Well, that will be on the other side of Christmas. Right now, we're going to turn to analyse this. Slightly different Analyse this time around. We're going to start off by looking at Liberty Hunter, and he won in impressive style a handicap chase over 2 miles at Cheltenham on Saturday. And this is what his rider, Harry Cobden, had to say about him.
Quite classy horse always, as you say. He's put that mental aptitude allied now to his talent. How far does that leave him behind the really good 2-milers?
He's probably a little way, to be honest. But he's... his improvement from last year to this year has been a lot, and we probably forget it's December and it's only his first run of the year, so he's entitled to improve a lot for that, isn't he? But realistically, he's going to have to go up in grade at some point, and the horses behind him are only handicappers, aren't they? When you run against John Bonnet, you're another level again, and he'll have to improve. But where'd you go with him? He's going to be a great handicapper, and he's going to find his level, isn't he? Yeah. He's a proper grade 2 horse.
No, I don't disagree with Harry Cobden. He rode the horse, but I do think off a mark of 151, where does Liberty Hunter now go? So if you watch him in the race, he drops in. He's a really good jumper. Good at the first fence, gets in deep at the second fence, but he's very fast. When he lands over the 8th fence, Harry Cobden has taken him back. And at the 9th fence, no time in the air. And he does come from well off the pace then to chase down Isra Dairy in front, pings the second last, on the bridle to the last, jumps it and puts the race to bed. So he may well be a grade 2 horse. But someone has to pick up the pieces in the grade 1 races. And the way this fella's ridden, I wouldn't see him being out of the money in a Queen Mother, ridden that way.
Okay, gents, next item on the agenda is we need to shoot something to use in the ad slot for the Road to Cheltenham.
The what?
Road to Cheltenham ad slot?
The Road to Cheltenham?
Yeah, Paddy Ware sponsored the Road to Cheltenham on Racing TV. You should probably know that.
How much is that costing us?
Doesn't matter.
Ah, come on, I'm on the Road to Cheltenham.
Yeah, thanks, Lydia. We already know you're on the Road to Cheltenham.
Oh, thanks, Tom. So now you want the viewers to endure me for the show and the ad slot?
Well, we can't afford to bring in anyone else.
Because the amount of bloody money we're paying to sponsor the thing.
Oh, forget it.
Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham. Apparently. First I've heard.
Now we need to move on with the novice chasers, and we're going to look back here at this section of the show because we've had at least 3 really strong races, and the obvious place to start, Ruby, is with Majborough's chase debut success at Fairyhouse.
Yeah, Mark Walsh rode him lined up, booked out in front, made all, very good at the first fence, and he jumped really well early in the race. Got in deep to the fifth last fence, and Asian Master and Tully Hill got up on his tail. But his jump at the fourth last was spectacular. Mark Walsh let him go, and then he was just too good for him down the straight. Tully Hill came to him at the second last. He quickened up really well. Last fence, a good jump, and he puts a lot of daylight between himself and two decent horses from their home. Asian Master almost gets to Tully Hill, but from a 4-year-old first time up, I thought it was spectacular.
And would he be the kind of horse that would be aiming for the Arkle or for the Brown Advisory? Because there's only two choices.
Oh, Arkle. I'd say it's, what is it, probably 4 weeks to that race in Naas from when he won. I'd imagine there, Dublin Racing Festival, Arkle, I would have thought.
I suppose people are asking the question because Willie Mullins has talked about the Gold Cup long term, but you know that the Arkle is no debar to a stepping stone towards the Gold Cup.
I would be shocked if Willie Mullins went 3 miles and won with a 5-year-old.
Now, we've been talking already in this series that Nicky Henderson has made no secret of the fact that he's got a strong band of novice chasers. And a horse I'm a big fan of, Jango Baie, took the scalp of Caldwell Potter at Cheltenham.
He did, and he was good. Caldwell Potter, look, we saw him at Carlisle. He was fuzzy and buzzy, and he raced down to the first fence at Cheltenham, got in deep and got himself out of it. And then he was good at the second, but so too was Jango Baie. And at the third fence, as good as Caldwell Potter was, Jango Baie wasn't being left behind. Fifth fence, they were all jumping really well. But when they got to the 11th, your eye was really taken by Jango Baie. He was doing a half speed outside of Caldwell Potter. 5 out, Harry Cobden landed. You could see him squeezing Caldwell Potter. And straight away, you were thinking, he's going to struggle here. The third last, they all jumped it well. Up to the second last fence. And this race wasn't in the balance. It was Nico de Bonneville. When was he going to press go? Now, I know Caldwell Potter no knuckles at the back of the last fence, but that was irrelevant to the result. And Jango Baie just pulled away to win impressively. I was really impressed with him. And it was a race running at a decent clip. Caldwell Potter probably on softer ground, but I was a little bit disappointed with him.
So was I. What's his trip?
I don't know.
Yeah.
He looks, I don't know, is he the kind of horse that thinks he's fast, but actually isn't that fast?
Yeah, it's possible. I love the way that Jango Baie uses himself over a fence, and I love the way he was looking for them as well. It's a really, really great start. We also had a deep beginner's chase at Naas.
We did. Lecky Watson, Slade Steele, big field, good gallop down to the first fence, really competitive. But the second fence, Lecky Watson was really quick and landed in front of the trio he was with. Did go a bit right at the fifth fence, Lecky Watson, and then at the eighth fence, Slade Steele jumped up onto his heels. Ninth fence, Slade Steele was pretty good. But then at the 10th fence, Lecky Watson got the better of the jumping in the air. Now, I don't think Slade Steele jumped poorly. I wasn't so sure the first time, but I watched it on replay. He's probably a little safe, but I think Lecky Watson just jumped really well. 2 out, they were both going well, and ultimately from the last fence home, Lecky Watson just grounded out better than Slade Steele. But to be fair to Lecky Watson, he's probably maturing. He was definitely looking easier right over fences than he ever was over hurdles. He wasn't a bad bumper horse. He was a decent novice hurdler, and it looks like he's going to be a much better chaser.
He did have a look at a couple of wings and at the stable exit, didn't he?
Everything. He's just a bit raw still, but he was definitely more rideable over fences than he was over hurdles.
I think Slade Steele is a bit too careful, certainly for this kind of trip. Are they starting to get worried at the Henry de Bromhead camp with this?
I'd say they're starting to scratch their head. 2 runs now, beaten twice. Follow better days ahead. Lecky Watson is probably running 2 deep races, but for a supreme winner, I'd imagine you would have thought you'd have won first time, and if not, definitely second time.
And Blizzard of Oz surely caught the eye, didn't he?
He did catch the eye, but is he the question mark on the form?
Well, that is ultimately the view I came to with that race.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. Okay. Clearly, we've got some really good novice chases over the Christmas period as well, which we'll be analysing on the other side. The Racing Post long distance chase, there is the betting for it. Now, Imperi Pass, Ruby, is a very short price favourite for this. Gordon Elliott has got 3 interesting ones there in it at this stage in Croke Park, Better Days Ahead and Stellar Story. What's your take on who might actually turn up here?
I'm not sure about Imperial Pass. I know he's a short price favourite, but look, trainers are creatures of habit. And Willie Mullins go 3 miles and 1 at Christmas time with a horse who's never gone 3 miles. I'd be surprised. I would be surprised if he doesn't go to Limerick. 2 miles and 3 for the Faugheen.
Okay, let's have a look at the Faugheen novice chase betting. There it is. And then there is Ballyburn to play with as well. And thinking
he could go there as well. He could go to Limerick, but he also will have the option of the Wayward Lad in Kempton on the 27th over 2 miles. But he's in there against Imperial Pass, Ballyburn, Better Days Ahead, Crow Park. They're all in the race in Limerick. I would have thought Crow Park would go to Leopardstown. He looked a real stare when he won the Drinmore Firefox. He'll probably end up in Limerick as well. So look, there's various different races in different places, and I just wouldn't be. I would be surprised if Imperial Pass went 3 miles. It's not in Willie Mullins. It's not what he does. He doesn't go long distances with younger horses until he has to.
And so that would mean that he'd be represented by High Class Hero and Key de Bourbon, or those two making their chase debut in a
they would all be debutants. So that's not probably great planning or programming either, but that seems to be what HRI are doing with the novice chase program in Ireland.
Okay, and so in Britain, by the way, the Faugheen, Limerick, what do you reckon the ground is going to be? Because I always assume default setting is going to be really, 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 really deep.
It's only yielding at the moment, but there's a lot of rain forecast. There could be 20 mils by Monday, which would change what the official going is at the moment. So again, it's hard to know what the ground is going to be Saturday, Lydia. Let alone what it's going to be next Thursday.
And then, of course, these are the key British novice chases over Christmas. The Howden on Friday at Ascot. Disappointing field for that one, I think. The Contenders over the course and distance of the King George. And, as Ruby has mentioned, the Wayward Lad the following day. Right, let's move on to the novice hurdlers. And again, we're going to have a quick look back. We're going to start with the Albert Bartlett novices hurdle that was run at Cheltenham on Saturday, Ruby. Which hurdles have you left out? Because wasn't there a mistake from someone at every single one of them?
It was just a litany of mistakes, wasn't it? They were all okay at the first. Second hurdle, Clondalk General got into too close. The third hurdle, it was Yellow Car's turn to make him. He launched at it and just got there. The fourth hurdle, Jet Blue, was quite deliberate and slow at the back. Sixth hurdle, then Western Leader lost his hind end. First hurdle, second circuit, Skyjack Hijack went at it and kicked it out of the ground. So too the Yellow Car, but at least Jet Blue was getting better. And I was interested. James Reedy, from having gone along last, was getting involved at the third last hurdle in Jet Blue. He had no doubt about this horse's stamina. Down to the second last hurdle, he got up sides on him and he really used his stamina. Jumped the last, guessed at the last Jet Blue, but he did stay on well to win. And look, there's not many long distance novice hurdles in France. So I could see why David Cotton brought him to England.
Yeah, and of course he could be represented at the King George by Juntos Ganamos, as we already mentioned. Country Mile won over shorter at Cheltenham.
Yeah, and Palacio went a really good gallop in this race. Wingman set second. That's Nice was your favourite. But when she jumped the second hurdle past the stands, her tail was sticking out at a weird angle behind her. And again, when she jumped the third hurdle, her tail was up in the air for whatever reason. Palacio had a good lead by the time he got to the third last, but the field did chase him down to the second last. And your eye was automatically drawn to Harry Skelton, who was cantering in last place. And from the road, he just switched in or found his way through. It wasn't an easy thing to do with only 4 runners. But I thought Country Mile jumped the last and pulled away. Palacio had run his race. Wingman looked like he maybe wanted a little bit further, but Country Mile did it well. That's why it was just really disappointing.
And is that making you think that there might be some sort of back issue that needed?
I don't know, but it didn't look right anyway. Not many horses gallop with their tail at that angle.
Okay, it was a compliment to Road Less Travelled, who I'll mention in a moment. But let's head back to, as a duo, a couple of JP McManus hurdlers. Are we going to Naas and Cork for this?
Yeah, 2. One of my dad's won at Naas was Sheffield the Deck, who had been third at Punchestown. He got a little bit high at the first hurdle, but they were going a really good gallop early in this race. And by the time he got to the second last, he had come to challenge Caribou. Bowen's on Fire stays on from behind, as too did Eastern Legend. But I like the way Sheffield the Deck went to the line. And below at Cork last Friday, Kel Histoire jumped out handily on the outside under Mark Walsh. Had a good look at the first hurdle and he was keen early in the race. Arrived going well to the third last, which he didn't jump great. Was safe at the second last. But when Mark let him go at the last hurdle, he pinged it and pulled away to win. What probably wasn't that strong a race.
No. Okay. What's your sense of how good he is?
I don't know.
I
don't. And I'm even not sure about how good Country Mile is. I'm not sure about Jet Blue. But the novice chasers seem to be taking more shape to me than the novice hurdlers. And the Christmas period will be interesting because I don't think any one horse has stamped its authority in the novice hurdle season.
I couldn't agree more. Let's have a look at the future champions novice hurdle betting. That's the grade 1 over 2 miles at Leopardstown over Christmas. We could potentially see Salvatore Mundi, Bleu de Vassy, Romeo Coolio there.
Yeah, you could see a load of horses. A strange race last year, Caldwell Potter won it, obviously, when it got really heavy. But yeah, lots of reputations. But unfortunately, when you get lots of reputations and put them all into one big melting pot, most of them get tarnished.
Well, that's racing. That's what racing is for, to find out who the best is. We've got key British novice hurdles over Christmas as well. The Formby at Aintree, that could feature road less travelled, who thumped Country Mile at Haydock. Country Mile did make a bad mistake at the last that day. And also then we've got Shallow, also for the O'Neills, John Joe and AJ. Mr. Meggitt could be running for them, and Potter's Charm could run in either of those races for the Twiston Davis. That's at Newbury on Saturday week. So that's the novice hurdlers. We're up to date there. The final section of the show will be the hurdlers. So we've got stayers and 2 milers in action over Christmas, and it's going to be good. The stayers are up first this Saturday at Ascot for the Grade 1 Lawn Walk Hurdle. And this used to be the domain of the usual suspects, but last year it was won by Crambo. Since then, we've had Strong Leader pushing through. We're going to start with him, Ruby, winning the Liverpool Hurdle.
Yeah, and I guess what's also interesting, Lydia, is where is the pace in this race, in this division anymore? We won't have Hewick in this race. You won't have Dash and Drasher. You won't have Flooring Porter. Look, and they were the ones that were good and handy. Crambo, Strong Leader, they were both held up. And both Hoxha, who could be the front runner, well, he was held up in this race at Aintree last year. 8th hurdle, Crambo made a mistake. And even though they went a good gallop, by the time they got to the 11th, Strong Leader was appearing on the outside under Sean Bowen doing a half speed. Buddy One led him to the second last. Hidden Valley Lake, who runs as well, was coming with Strong Leader. And they both looked like they were getting the Buddy One going to the last. Which one was going to go by? It was Strong Leader. And if anything, I think he improved from there with his performance at Newbury. He's the right favourite. And he's probably heading the charge in the UK.
Yeah, he's on the up. He just needs to make his hurdles slicker, which is easier said than done. He's a klutz.
He is forming his own method.
That's his own philosophy on hurdling, and he will not deviate from it. Let's have a look at the select from the end of last season. In Paris, Langadan, who wasn't declared for this race, in first and second, but Blue King Daru and Bottles Haas were also there.
They were, and Botox Haas jumped out to make the run in the select hurdle and went a pretty decent gallop. Down to the 5th hurdle, he was still going a good gallop. Blue King Daru was dropped in behind, but ultimately, when it got down to the business end, neither of them were good enough. This was over a much shorter trip, and Impere Pass arrived up at the second last. He pulled clear of Langerdan to confirm their form from the Aintree hurdle, and Blue King Daru and Botox Haas, look, they were runners, but I think they're hard to fancy on Saturday myself.
Now, the Wall Park is an interesting runner because after he won this race you're about to show us, Gordon Elliott was talking about the final, the Perteps final for him. Now he's pitching up in a Grade 1. He's since been bought by JP McManus. Yeah,
and it's a different proposition for him. Dropped in 2/3 of the way back at Cheltenham. He was bidding for a 5-timer. He'd won off marks of 129, 137, 44, 45. He's up to 152 after this. 4 out. There's only 1 horse behind him. Second last, he's tucked in on the Jordan Gainford. He gets the splits. Now, he does find plenty going to the last and does outstay Gowl Road from there home. But still, I think it's a fair step from that race to the race he's running in on Saturday. And I think you could safely say Strong Leader Crambo would have done exactly what the Wall Park did in that race.
Okay. I guess they're trying to find out. Gordon Elliott's made the point that he doesn't show much at all really at home, and yet he still keeps managing to win.
And he's only a 6-year-old, so he does have age on his side, and mark of 152. Yeah, he's interesting, but I did like Ollie Murphy's horse at Newbury, and I think as he figures out that method, he'll only be getting better.
I guess Gordon Elliott and JP McManus are seeking, very sadly, a replacement for Sire de Burley. And of course, Gordon Elliott has got Chupu to measure him against, albeit that, the homework doesn't really give him many clues. Let's have a look at the Savills Christmas Hurdle. Over in Ireland, they've got a Christmas hurdle of their own, the Savills Christmas Hurdle for the long distance horses. Let's take a look at that. Now, this anti-post market was thrown into some turmoil after Chupu, who Gordon Elliott had suggested might run here, isn't. So that means, Ruby, that the best place to start, I think, is last year's race where the current favourite, Home by the Lee, was a bit of a flop. He'd won it the previous year. This time around, not the same horse.
No, I had to make his own running. JJ Slevin booked him out. He didn't really want to go in front, kept jamming on at his hurdles, jumped notoriously out to his right, and none of the riders behind him gave him any help. Why would they give him any help? But they didn't. And the race eventually turned into a sprint off the home turn, and Irish Point, who had all the class and would subsequently go on to be placed in the champion hurdle, just routed the opposition. Western Forlorn was a good second. Ballyadam was third. Home by the Lee was last. What was fourth again?
Beacon Edge.
Beacon Edge was fourth. Look, similar horses back in again, but Home by the Lee, I think he looked a better horse. They're not a better horse, but he definitely looked more straightforward in the Lismullen this year than he did in that race last year.
He did. They applied blinkers, didn't they, in the Stayers Hurdle? That reaped a third in that, second at Punchestown. He was without the blinkers when he beat Bob Ollinger in the Lismullen.
Yeah, he was. And he booked out good and handily in the Lismullen. Bob Ollinger tracked them along. Eagle Fang, of course, who runs in the long walk on Saturday, came to challenge them at the second last. And Home by the Lee quickened up well under Danny Mullins down to the last hurdle. Bob Ollinger briefly looked like he might challenge him. Ultimately, he didn't. And Home by the Lee outstayed him to win the Lismullen. And beat Bob Ollinger. They had won the previous two run-ins of the race, and they were first and second again this year. It's not a vintage renewal of that race, is it?
No. Do you anticipate the headgear might go back on Home by the Lee?
I don't know. Winning without it the last time, be a big call, isn't it?
It is, but then I suppose I'm thinking about what happened last time. Of the two, I feel that Bob Ollinger is more consistent.
Yeah, and he probably is.
And that might win out.
It might win out, but we'll ask her in for launch, get his there.
You know, our team member Will Haley would absolutely love that. We should say Hewick is still in this race, as well as the King George at the time of speaking. Brighter Days Ahead, and we're about to talk about her, is also here at the moment. And Noble Yates, an update from Emmett Mullins. He said that this was to come in late this season, might need this run in the Christmas Hurdle, although the ground will suit. And the plan beyond this is the Cleve and the Grand National. Okay, so that's the Stayers. Now let's move on to the 2 mile hurdlers, because we hope that these are going to be a couple of corkers. The other Christmas hurdle is over 2 miles at Kempton, sponsored by Ladbrokes, and it could see Constitution Hill versus Lossiemouth. The vibes are that Constitution Hill, after a number of issues, is going to be able to make it to Kempton, and he has won the past 2 editions of this race, Ruby.
He has, but let's just have a little look at Constitution Hill. So you go back to March 2022, this is him in the Supreme, beating John Bunn, 22 lengths. Then you roll it on to December, turns up at Kempton doing his first Christmas hurdle, and he beats Epitante by 17 lengths. Wins the champion hurdle. He beats Stateman, has a guess at the last by 9 lengths. And then last year he turned up at the Christmas hurdle, the last time we saw him, and he beats Rubo, but only by 9 lengths, Lydia.
I know what you're mentioning. It was me saying that is lesser form. My point is that the last twice that we've seen this horse, one was where we think we might have seen the summit of his ability at least over 2.5 miles at Aintree, and then the next time we saw him was at Christmas, which was not enough of a test to know exactly where he is. Since then, he's had a series of well-publicised issues. So I'm looking at it like a punter, and I'm asking, just because we know that Constitution Hill was one of the best hurdlers I've ever seen, is he that now? I mean, it's going to be his 9th start under rules. Lossiemouth is about to have her 11th start, and she's only 5.
Yeah, I know, and she's been incredible. And with Lossiemouth, where's the flaw? She can go left or right. So you watch her here, Fairy House right-handed, where she beats 2 proof flies down and pings the last. You can watch her going left-handed when she won the Triumph Hurdle back in March 2023 when she beat Gala Marceau. Trip, well, 2 miles and 1 last year in the International Hurdle, where she beats Love Envoy. You can go 2.5, where she won the Mayor's Hurdle and beat Tell Me Something Girl. And if you're wondering then, does she have the speed? Well, just watch what she did to Zarek the Brave in her very first run in Ireland, where she scooted down to the last hurdle in the Danny Mullins and shot away from him. She seems to have everything, but when you go through all of her form, with the exception of Chupum, she isn't beating anything like Constitution Hill or run against anything like him.
No, she really hasn't, but she's got that eye-catching. We know from times how good she is. We know that she's got time on her side and soundness on her side, and they're coming at it from 2 totally different angles. We can't completely count out the idea that Sergino might be here.
You know, there's still the distinct possibility that Sergino would even possibly turn up over fences at Kempton.
It still could turn up over fences at Kempton.
They've got to go somewhere.
Okay, so that suggests that Constitution Hill is well.
But he's fine. I mean, he looks really well, and we're happy.
Yeah, so that would be the idea. He'd go to the Christmas hurdle, and then Sergino would go
up in the air. But let's see how we get on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you definitively say you wouldn't run them both in the Christmas hurdle?
No, I wouldn't say we wouldn't. No, I mean it's possible we do. I think it's that You know, if all's going, I'm still tempted with Sagino over fences. He's a very, very good jumper.
Have you schooled him over fences since he won the Fighting Fifth?
No,
Yeah, you don't need to.
we're thinking about it.
So let's move on then to the Neville Hotels hurdle betting, and the Morgiana is a key form line. It is the rematch between Brighterdaysahead and State Man. Brighterdaysahead lowering the colours of last season's top 2 mile hurdler. What do you think in terms of this track, really? Because for me, it's one that really will suit State Man.
It does. He's a great record there. But if we just look at Morgiana, just for a quick recap, she booked out in front. Now, we know she jumps to her left, but she went a decent gallop. She dragged Paul into it. Last hurdle, they get upsides going to it, and she gets back in front. Now, the majority of people will say fitness won out on the day. I think she did plenty wrong as well. So it's going to be a really interesting race. But if you watch State Man here in 2022, she is electric, booked out, and went a really good gallop. And State Man left her off. Now, she led him to the third last hurdle where Paul took over. He jumps the second last, which was the last on the day because of low lying sun. And when he rounded by what was bypassed, he scooted away to win his first hurdle at this time of the year. Roll it on 12 months. Feast Dudari bounced out and goes a good gallop. Paul let him lead him. He led him all the way to the second last hurdle when Paul took over, and then a really good jump at the last. And he used too much gears for Imperial Pass. This year's race, F&Off Fizz is an entry. She likes the front run a bit like she is electric, or Feast Dudari did. And the really interesting entry, I thought, was King of Kingsfield. And I think he's an interesting entry because if you look at Brighterdaysahead, her only defeat came in the Mayor's Novice hurdle at Cheltenham last March. If you look at the third hurdle, they're doing 28 miles an hour. Fourth hurdle, 27. Third last hurdle, they're still only doing 27 miles an hour. The race was really steadily run, and then they sprinted off the bend up to 35, 36 miles an hour, and Golden Ace out-sprinted her. So I think they've learned from that day. Every day should teach you something, and nobody gets everything right all the time. But I think King of Kingsfield has been pitched in here in case there's no gallop, and they're going to drag the mare. And I think it could make this into one hell of a race if that happens.
It really could be good because she didn't like, as you said, making the running, but State Man is back on turf that really suits him. So it brings them back together, doesn't it? It's such a good contest. It would be great if both of these 2 mile grade 1 hurdles do what they say currently on the tin.
They do, but what we need to happen is you need Constitution Hill to run a blinder, but Lossiemouth just beat him. And you also need Brighterdaysahead to just beat State Man. And then you have the 4 of them still in the mix. Because if the 2 geldings beat the 2 mares, there's only one way they're going.
That's true. I think your letter to Santa Claus is sorted there, Ruby. Make sure you write all those details. Right, we've come to the end of the pre-Christmas show. My column is available as usual on the website, racingtv.com/Road to Cheltenham. We will be back on Sunday week with our now traditional mashup special with the Let's Talk Racing team of Josh Stacey and Andrew Blair White. And we're looking forward to that, aren't we, Ruby?
Can't wait, yeah.
Yeah, it should be good. Make sure you join us for that. And then we'll be back in the new year every Thursday at 9 o'clock once again. The first of those being on the 2nd of January. In the meantime, Ruby and I wish you a very Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.